This story is a tragic tale of self-harm and infanticide, which some viewers may find distressing. If you think you may be upset by this, I suggest that you skip this story. Thank you. This event took place just north of the beautiful border town of Peebles, at the spot indicated on the map.
I've always loved history, and one of the things that I enjoy is you know a little bit about what's happened. I think that the ghosts of the past are always here, silently standing, watching us, just waiting on their stories to be told. Here we are in a place called the Winkston Level Crossing, just outside Peebles, which is a couple of miles to the south. This used to be the main railway line between Peebles and Edinburgh. You can see where the track comes along the high ground, where these trees are. Just up there is the main road between Edinburgh and Peebles. It's a very busy road now. And in 1879, a horrific event took place here, and the ghosts of Mrs. Murray and her children, I think, deserve to have their story told. George Murray was a surface man, somebody who maintains the tracks on the railway line, also in some places called a plate layer. Murray lived here on this site with his wife and 4 children. This was called the Winkston Level Crossing, and it was Mrs. Murray's job to open the gates that would go across the road to stop any traffic crossing the railway if there's a train approaching. She would be quite busy at this task, as this was a very busy line. A couple of miles to the south we've got the town of Peebles, and about 25 miles approximately we've got Edinburgh. So this was the main line between Edinburgh and Peebles. At 6:30 a.m. on the 11th of April 1879, George Murray and his wife had breakfast here as their children slept. After breakfast, George headed off to work. When the 8:30 train to Edinburgh passed, the driver noticed that Mrs. Murray was stood by the gates. A short while later, a Mr. John Cairns, a farmer who farmed locally at Winkston Farm, he came down the road on the way back to his farm, and to his surprise he saw that the gates were still blocking the roadway. He shouted, but got no answer, so he had to open the gates himself. He got back to the farm and asked some of his workers if they'd seen Mrs. Murray that morning, but no one had. Sensing something was wrong, Cairns came back to the cottage. He noted that the door was bolted and the windows were all locked. Cairns managed to find some railway workers who were working nearby, and together they forced open a window. When they looked into the dark cottage, they immediately knew something was very, very wrong. A messenger was sent to Peebles to fetch the police. When Chief Constable Watson and a Sergeant Cunningham appeared, along with a railway worker, they forced the door open.
Explore Castle Menzies after dark.
Is it really haunted?
Is it really haunted?
Book now to find out.
If you dare.
On a table, scrawled on a school slate, Mrs. Murray had written, "It's my head, my darling man." On top of a pot of porridge, she had placed her wedding ring. The ring was blood-stained.
Inside the cottage, the men found a scene of utter horror. The 4 children, the oldest a 9-year-old girl, and 3 younger boys, the youngest no more than a few months old, lay on a gory mattress in bed, dead. Their throats had been slit. Mrs. Murray lay nearby on the floor, also dead. A gaping wound on her neck. A cut-throat razor lay beside her. It seemed Mrs. Murray, whose maiden name was Binney, had a history of mental illness. She'd been complaining to her husband for weeks of suffering severe headaches. Her family also had a history of mental illness. Her brother was at that time locked up in the Rosewell Lunatic Asylum, and a female relative had killed herself in the past. It looked as though, in a fit of madness or depression, she butchered her children before killing herself. 3 of her children were dressed and the school books and satchels were laid out for school, indicating that this violent act was carried out on the spur of the moment. The eldest boy had defence wounds. He'd fought for his life as his deranged mother attacked him. 2 doctors, the family doctor, Mr. Ferguson, and a Dr. Connell, were to state that Mrs. Murray was not accountable for her actions, as she was of unsound mind when she committed this crime.
The funeral convoy made slow process from Peebles out here to Innerleithen, and the service was held at Innerleithen Church. When the service was finished, they were brought to the graveyard, where Mrs. Murray was buried with 2 of her children, and her other children were buried in a separate grave. Now, we're not sure if this is where that the Murrays were laid to rest. I've tried to look for their grave and find a grave service online to no avail. We've come to this cemetery, which is the oldest, and it sits to the east of the Innerleithen, and we've had a wee look around. Can't find any indication that the Murrays were buried here. I kind of hope they were, because it's a lovely, quiet, peaceful cemetery. We've got the river, the noise of the river just at the other side of the wall there. It's nice. So I do hope that they were laid to rest here. I hope you enjoyed this story, and please like the station if you have, and keep an eye out for more stories from Scotland and the wider area. Thank you very much.
If you've enjoyed the story, please like and subscribe. You might like to take one of our dark history tours, ghost tours, or paranormal investigations that are held in Perthshire, Glasgow and Stirling. If so, please visit our website, which is www.historyandhorrortours.com. Thank you.